Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our monthly speaker series presentation. We try and do it the third Sunday of the month, but sometimes we switch it around depending on holidays and such. And it always has some kind of something to do with Filipino American history. And we have speakers from all different walks of life. So we're thankful that Conrad wanted to do this today. And Elena had brought him by a few months ago to our museum, and because he had just finished showing his new book and performing over at our local community college. And so Elena brought him by and introduced us to him. So we're thankful to Elena for that. And so I wish there was more of the people coming in, but we'll get started. So Conrad, I'll let you go ahead and say a little bit about yourself and how everything came about. So go ahead.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this talk. Um, I guess my name is Conrad, and I'm a teacher here at San Francisco. And shout out to Rachel, who's attending and listening in, former student of mine. Hi, Rachel. I haven't seen you in a long time, and I'm so happy to see your name there. Um, Musalaya's Gift is a fantasy novel uh, that Cool Arts published. So I'm going to put the link to the book on the chat there, and Cool Arts is a long-standing arts organization in San Francisco that is headed by the incomparable Alleluia Panis. And I'll share my screen because I wanted to. Oops. Am I able to share my screen? Terry?
Okay, let me, okay, I
You can
gotta give you,
co-host me.
yeah, I have to make co-host. Okay.
Great. So that link takes you to the website, the Cool Arts website where my book is, and it's and your event is right here. And it's such a fantastic website. I'm really Paige. It's such an honor. Cool Arts is doing a really good job with, you know, getting reviews and promoting the book, and you know, getting reviews from young people and professors to review it. Um, and they've just been such great supporters and awesome sort of managers of the creation of this book, because it's just really a story in a bunch of pages that I typed, and Cool Arts made it into this artwork, this piece of artwork, with all this amazing art and iconography in the book that was created by Filipino American artists who are just amazing artists. So these maps are by Raf Salazar, and the cover is by Nikila Badua. And all the iconography in the book is by another artist who works with DC and Image and Marvel, and is a really outstanding artist in his own right. So if you want to buy the book, then the link to the book is right here, and it'll take you to the printer basically called Book Baby that Cool Arts used to publish my book. So this is where people go to buy the book online. Today I wanted to sort of connect parts of the book to U.S. history and Philippine history in honor of FANHS, and so I wanted to talk about land and music and resistance as it is in the book. So what I wanted to do was sort of share the connection to land and the connection to music, and then read excerpts that sort of speak to these topics. So, does anybody have any questions before I move on? All good? Okay. So, I did prepare some pictures. So, to begin, Masalaya's gift is really an allegory for anti-colonialism and colonialism in the Philippines. And so, if the map of the fictional place of Agmana looks familiar, there's a reason why. It's roughly sort of modeled after the Philippine Islands, with a major northern region, a major southern region, and islands in the middle. And and in terms of this place called Agmana, I really wanted to focus on this tiny little village called Daranglahi, which is situated in by a cove in this southern island of Himagsikan. And I just wanted to sort of share where all the imagery and where the places and descriptions of that little village called Daranglahi come from. And it really comes from my childhood memories of the island where my father is from, called Romblon. So here is Romblon. It's the it's the marble capital of the Philippines. That's all marble. That's me when I visited Romblon with Catherine. I'm her husband. With Catherine in 2016, when we had to bring my mom and my dad back to my dad's birthplace after he had suffered a stroke, and he needed care, and it was best to have him back in his hometown where the family, quite frankly, could afford the care. So that is how I ended back visiting this place of my childhood after more than 30 years. After a more than 30 years absence. I came to the United States in 1986 as a 13-year-old, and I didn't go back to the Philippines until 2016. And that was a really long absence that was caused by many different reasons, like life happens. But the long absence from my childhood place really figures heavily into the writing of the book. So this is what Romblon looks like, where we stay. This is, you don't see it, but my parents' little cottage is right there by the ocean. If you can see some hints of blue, that's the little house where they stay. And this was really this was our home in Romblon. And I used to spend all of my summers as a child there. And this is really where all of my love of nature and respect for nature and sort of environmentalism comes from. This is sort of the origin of it all. I also conduct an environmental education program called the Wilderness Arts and Literacy Collaborative with Catherine, And Rachel, who's in attendance, is actually a former student. And what we do is we take kids out and we take them to nature and teach them or help them examine the different processes that govern our planet. And the original love of that and the original appreciation from that, for me, really comes from all of my experiences in this island. And it's really beautiful, as you can see. Beautiful enough to foster a lifelong love of the earth and nature. And of course, also, it's also not just beautiful, but also can be creepy and and creatures. And so this is called a tuko. It's a native lizard in the Philippines. Very charismatic lizard that makes this really distinctive sound at night. It goes tuko. And they're fantastic to have in your house because they eat insects. But this is just an example of. I wanted to include this image because I think it evokes the sort of mystery and also terror that can be fostered in the minds of young, impressionable youth in the islands where it's dark at night and there are stories of creatures everywhere. And that also figures prominently in my book. And so this is a picture of the coast, and I wanted to share it because to me looking at sort of like the landscape is really reminiscent of how I used to look at this place with such wonder and a sense of adventure. And so this is really the setting for Daranglahi. The cove, the trees, the water, and so I wanted to read an excerpt from the book to sort of show the connection between these childhood memories and what I imagined the place of the protagonist, where the protagonist was born, and the kind of childhood that the protagonist had. All right, so I'll just read a couple of pages maybe. This is from page 48. I don't know if anybody has read my book yet, except for Catherine. But this is when the protagonist Alad, his best friend Bembol, and their older cousin Lualhati are out on the bay, spending time on a boat as kids. So this is their sort of memory. So, a ring of lofty coconut trees leaned over the shores of Daranglahi Cove, like giants waiting to dive into the warm waters. Here and there, weathered basalt flows jutted out to meet the waves, partitioning the white sand beaches. Alad recalled how he spent days walking along the cove with Bembol and Hati. When they were little, they picked guavas and mangoes, caught hermit crabs, jumped into the surf when it got too hot, pretended each new beach that appeared at the crest of an outcropping was another foreign kingdom to be explored. Once they discovered an ancient Pawikan sea turtle shell that was so broad they could all fit underneath it and crawl along the sand, protected and unseen. After a fantastical afternoon of repulsing dayuhan and monsters, with the Pawikan's enchanted armor, they swam out as far as they dared, each buoying the shell with one hand. Right above the right above the brightly colored corals, they let it go and swam back with wistful smiles as the ridged dark green carapace silently slank down onto the reef. The young islanders were lost in their own memories as they lounged drowsily on the hull of Mangbagani's gently bobbing fishing boat. The native outriggers were designed for speed and stability, consisting of a sleekly tapered body and two long cylindrical floats made of bamboo culms. The floats were tied onto booms that lay across the deck. These booms curved downward so that the floats at the ends could bob on the water's surface. When the sail was stretched full against the mast, along the path of a hearty wind, a bangka could glide as swiftly atop the waves as a seabird in full wing. The three sailors crisscrossed the cove all afternoon, harnessing the ocean breeze with such abandon that they almost capsized twice, even with Lualhati nimbly walking the booms out onto the floats to counter the tipping force of the wind with her weight. Alad loved watching the rainbow of colors whiz by underneath them as the bangka flew over the reefs. Whenever they reached the deep blue waters just beyond the mouth of the cove, he tried to follow the long rays of the sun with his eyes as far down into the mysterious depths as possible. They caught glimpses of sea turtles and dolphins, moving like echoes in the deep, and when they sailed fast enough, groups of flying fish would jump out of the water, extending their wing-like fins and gliding for a magical moment above the splash of the prow. It was an enchanting afternoon in the cove, one that had been lived by many generations of happy Lukat children. So that's the excerpt that was fueled by all of my memories of this place. And I think the thing that makes this book sort of a distinctly Filipino-American book is that I wrote that passage before these pictures were taken. In other words, they were completely sort of me just trying to reconstruct my memories of the place and reimagine what it was. And so it was an interesting feeling to, write this book and then finally come home in 2016 and sort of contrast the ways in which I had reimagined the place, this special place of my youth in a fantasy book. So yeah, that's the first part. That's the first part I wanted to share. I'll pause to see if anybody has any comments or questions before I move on. Then I wanted to talk about sort of the fantasy aspect of the book. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I'd like to make a comment and ask a question. This is Marilyn.
Yes.
It's so beautiful. I'm wondering where you and your immediate family live now.
Thank you for the question. My mom and my dad, until my dad passed away this last September, lived in Romblon again from 2016 to 2022. So they had a good 6 years in this beautiful place together again before my dad passed from COVID. And after that, we had to go get my mom, and so my mom is with us now, next door with my brother. And so primarily my family now lives in California. I'm here in San Francisco with my brother and my mother, and I have a sister in LA, another sister in Arizona, and my brother is in Manila. Manila being Valzuela in my book. So Manila is Valenzuela in my book. So my mom is actually from Manila, you know, born and raised a city girl. And when she married my dad, Romblon became their place. And this little strip of land by the ocean is still a part of the family's. And, you know, I hope to go back there again at some point.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, yes, I was thinking you might be living in San Francisco because in regard to your band, see, I'm retired now from museum work and everything else is, I can manage it. But I know, there's that Asian Arts Museum. I can't remember the exact name. And
Yeah,
so and many other places in San Francisco where, so has your band played in several places already in San Francisco area?
yeah, we've performed at the Asian Art Museum
Okay.
and Santa Cruz and Capo Gardens, Manila Town Heritage Foundation. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
I'm just getting to know Grass Valley where I'm living now.
Mhm.
So I'll ask around and see, if there's any local organizations even that would consider this, because there's different, small venues that I'm learning about through my brother who's lived here a long time.
Great.
So I'll keep my eyes and ears open for you. And I'm also wondering, you're sounding like a very professional writer. So have you written stories or published before?
Thanks for that question. I do take that as a point of pride. The the writing in the book. Um, this is the first. This is the first book I've ever published. Um, although I write all the time, and Catherine and I, poetry and creative writing is a sort of foundational aspect of our program called Walk, and so our kids learn how to write, and and so I do have a lot of experience teaching writing and grant writing and writing for Walk, but this is the first published piece that I have, and I hope to have more. I have another book that I'm shopping around, which is based on, I think Rachel will appreciate this. This next book is based on it's sort of my love letter to the wilds of California, where I've taken my students these past 20 years. And so the setting is sort of based on that. It's another fantasy novel. But yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, shall I continue?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so in the book, here are the mangroves that keep the water clean, and that I think more and more communities are learning to appreciate the value of. Don't cut the mangroves because they are so essential in keeping the coastal communities safe from rising sea levels, and also they act as an amazing filtration device for all of the runoff coming off of the land. So anyway, in the book, it's a fantasy book, so there are deities, and one of the deities is Ikapati, which is, in Tagalog, she's really sort of like the goddess of the harvest, agriculture. And in Daranglahi, they are farmers. But in the book, for me, she sort of encompasses the sort of spirit of the land. And the way it works in my book is that a deity such as Ikapati can come to inhabit a person whom they have chosen. And it's not it's a possession, but they are not possessed. Meaning, the person that is being inhabited by the deity still knows who they are. They still have free will, but they sort of exist together at the same time. Like how two notes can create a chord, you know? Like in Kulintang, when you strike two notes, it creates a chord. It's the same thing. So two beings existing together at the same time. And so one of the major characters in the book, her name is Tadhana, and she's sort of like the mountain, the leader of the mountain warriors, the free peaks of Coronadal, where the heart of the resistance is. Because Coronadal, Magtanggol. I had to change the names of these places. Magtanggol Mountains are where the last free sort of people are, because Agmana has been colonized. It's been taken over by people from a foreign land called Perdit, and it's a fantasy novel. So I play around with different types of magic that are supposed to represent sort of indigenous values versus imperialist or colonialist values. And so one magic is a magic of permission, in which sort of the spirits of the land and the power that is the land communes with you and chooses you. And the other magic, which is coming from the foreign invaders, is sort of like a magic of coercion and a magic of trying to harness the power or the spirit of the land to do your bidding, as opposed to communing with it and making decisions together in a democratic process between deities and people. Ikapati is one of the goddesses, and Magwayan is the goddess of the sea. And these two deities come to inhabit two sisters, Tadhana and Liwaiwai, and they feature prominently in sort of the plot and the arc of the story. But now I wanted to read an excerpt from the book that sort of talks about these two different ways of seeing the earth, sort of seeing it as a resource to be extracted versus seeing it as a home, or even a living thing that you need to be in communion with. So I hope that this excerpt sort of conveys that. I really try. I try to kind of really get that across. So I'll read two excerpts. So let's see here. Okay, so this is when Tadhana, who is otherwise known as the Bailabi, is talking to Alad about something that Alad needs to do, but she sort of talks about herself as well. So let's see. Okay, so the Bailabi got up and sat next to him. She took his hands and smiled encouragingly. Alad, she began, they've told you the stories, yes, of my sister and me and Masalaya? Yes, I don't understand. I'll try my best to explain. Then it became very hard for Alad to tell which one was speaking. Tadhana, the Bailabi in front of him, or the young Diwata who was embodied in her. Do you know what Ikapati is? A Diwata, you're the word of the land. In my book, I call them words with a capital W. And the next bit will kind of explain why. Yes, Ikapati is a word that Lukat learned to utter. It is a sound for green grass and hills, the rumble of hooves and quakes, a nice tart mango. When you utter that word, you make the sound that all of this land trills to. Alad sat up. Like the right note. Yes. Did you know that sunlight has a trill to it too? Fire, falling water, salt, marble, wood, they all trill. Open trills, closed trills, doubles, triples, rests, cycles, melodies. How am I supposed to figure out how to play for my itai? He shook his head. It seemed ludicrous. Well, you're not completely in the dark, Bai Tadhana chuckled softly. You've been taught, haven't you? We have songs for most anything. We have one for processionals. Duyog, Alad said automatically. Weaving, kasulampid. Welcome, kapagonor. Healing, tagungo. Bai Tadhana held onto his hands and patiently regarded Alad with kindness and firm expectation. There was unmistakable demand in the Bailabi's eyes, but also a great deal of warmth. It made Alad want to succeed. And so they sort of go on and talk about it, and Alad, Tadhana / Ikapati tries to give him, they try to give Alad some encouragement, and then finally, let's see. Okay, so here's one other little excerpt that I think sort of speaks to what I'm saying. The Bailabi let his hands go and leaned back against a wooden bench. He looked up at the stars, and Alad followed her gaze. There was a song for seeing stars too. Ikapati inhaled deeply inside. The girl inside whispered, I am the word for this land, and I am indeed mighty. Let the Corsairs beware, but I'm also young, small, and unsure. Alad gazed at Bai Tadhana, unable to separate her from the image of Ikapati, but it felt right that they were one. Two notes could occupy the same place at the same time, still different but one. Bai Tadhana, yes, I'll try. I think I've got something to go on at least. Bai Tadhana nodded. Have you ever wondered how the songs started? Some of them are so old. People must have been sitting around their instruments composing, or I don't know. It's a fine thing though, isn't it? That no one owns them. There's no name attached to any song. There are no stories that reveal the first to string those cycles together. Alad thought for a while. I have one last question, Bailabi. The space inside of us, in the stories, the place where everything can fit, yes. The healing comes from there, yes. How will I know when I've opened the door to it? Or if I'm speaking from that place with my song? It ought to feel like a slow breath out, I should think. It's why it is called your kaluluwa, after all, that which you exhale. From the place inside where everything fits. So that's when Alad sort of like meets the Bailabi / Ikapati, and that's where I try to show that concept of possession but not being possessed, of a spirit that can inhabit you, but still you have your own free will. And that speaks to this last thing where this other excerpt that I wanted to share that contrasts that quote unquote magic or that set of values with the values or the magic, the values which are represented by the magic that the perditions have brought to Agmana. Okay, so this next scene is from the epic, before the epic battle in the end, where the fate of everything is decided. As with all fantasy novels, there's got to be an epic battle in the end. But this sort of shows the contrast between the different ways in which the indigenous inhabitants of this land do magic as opposed to the people who are taking them over.
Excuse me, Conrad.
Oh,
Conrad,
sorry.
I'm following you on the book. So
Sorry?
could you tell me what page you're reading from?
Oh yes, I'm
got the
sorry.
book
Yes,
in my
if you're
hand.
following me in the book, this next one is the bottom of page 265.
Thank you.
If you want to follow me in the book, the bottom
Yes,
of
I
265. So it's a bit of a spoiler, I guess, if you haven't read the book yet. But hopefully, if you haven't read the book or if you haven't bought the book, then hopefully these little excerpts are encouraging you to do so, because I'm trying to sell books. Okay, so the Corsair's deadly veil was an amorphous yellow cloud that crackled like lightning. Lualhati scanned the barons for the Corsair who had conjured it, but could find no wizard amidst the throng of soldiers. The man she sought was sitting comfortably on an elaborate rattan chair under the awning of his pavilion in the middle of the barons. Lualhati sat atop Baitadhana's great black and gold lizard, her arms around the mountain queen's waist. As soon as the conjuring began, Lualhati felt the shift in her great aunt. Her face still wore the rock-hard lines of determination, but inside her, the spirit of Ikapati writhed. "What's wrong?" Lualhati whispered in her ear. Tadhana turned and looked over her shoulder. "Their magic is a violation," Ikapati whispered back through the Bailabi. It frays me. I don't understand. That thing," Ikapati pointed at the glowing cloud, "is from the same upwelling of energy and life we all come from. But look at it. It is bent to the form of someone's will. It has no voice. That shapeless thing, it is me if I became nameless and unthinking." Ikapati's pain was written on Baitadhana's face. "How?" Lualhati asked. "Their magic results in my dissolution. The more they coerce the world's pulse, the more I lose myself, until finally I can no longer answer to the word the Lukat have named me." Ikapati looked Lualhati fiercely in the eyes. "Do you see how they rob you?" Her voice shook with outrage. "How they have robbed you all these hundreds of years." Finally, the young woman understood. The realization made her hands itch for her sword. She wrapped her arms tighter around Baitadhana's waist. "I will never forget you," she whispered. So, I'll stop there. I know it's kind of weird to get emotional off of your own writing. It's like kind of, I don't know, self-indulgent. But I get emotional when I read that because I really do feel that, the idea of being, how colonialism can sort of rob indigenous people of these very, very sacred connections with the land, and really it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter whether there is actually a spirit that can come inside of you or not. It doesn't matter. In my program Walk, we're all about the science. It's all about science, and it's all about the scientific process and inquiry. And but it really lands and ends up in the same place when you get to know a place, when you get to know the land, and when you work the land and help to steward or help with the natural processes of the land. The ending place is the same. It's reverence. It's a sense of responsibility. And so, does it matter if there's really a spirit? I don't think. I think there is a spirit. You know, it just doesn't have to be. It just doesn't have to be like a deity or a goddess. So anyway, that's where that comes from, and I think that's sort of like the resistance that I'm trying to portray in the book. It's an allegory for different ways that people approach the land. One is extraction, coercion, looking at it as an object, and one is about reverence and being aware of having. One is of reverence and letting the land have a voice inside of you, whether that voice is actually a goddess or whether that voice is simply your understanding of the natural processes that govern it and your respect for that. So I think it's the same thing. So I'll stop. I'll pause there. That's like the first part. I'm also very cognizant of everybody's time. So if anybody has any questions and comments, I'll, let's entertain that, and then I'd like to move on to the music piece. But maybe we don't have to go all 2 hours, because I don't know. It seems like a lot. Maybe I should, stop. But does anybody have any questions or comments?
Well, I do.
Okay.
Conrad, I was born and raised not too far from Romblon.
Oh,
I'm from Capiz,
yay.
Panay Islands, and I lived there until I was 7 years old. So when I listened to you just a few minutes ago, it already explained to me why I felt so much emotion reading your book, that you kind of imbibe the island living, and it opened up your mind and your eyes and your consciousness. And now the real gift here on Conrad is how you put science and literature together. It's like scientific is your job, but literature is your pastime, plus music. So I think you're up for some Pulitzer Prize or something, because we're slowly claiming the land in different places. And the value of your book to me is that island living really is a strong influence if you listen. If you listen to what it says, there is a voice in the island. And if you go up to the age of reason, which I did, a lot of that got stuck with me. And in your case, actually, it got waylaid a little bit. You went to America. And then when you came back, you had the right words you were writing before you saw the island. So there's that memory that is a memory bank of those experiences that came back to you. And the reason I'm talking this way is because the value of your book is you take it one chapter at a time. I think you spent about 8 pages per chapter. I divided the number of pages and the number of chapters that you created. So you have about approximately 8 for each chapter, or less 7.5. Your book can be read or can be used for a teaching tool one chapter at a time. either it is a chapter as an expansion of, say, marine life, or how to build a boat, or it's a chapter about relationships of people who are close to the land. So take it one chapter at a time. This is what I saw. Take it one chapter at a time. Use it for teaching literature to young people. I see 10 years old in the website. I said, that's the perfect age. That's the perfect age when language is there, imagination is there, and so much more. And then if I were talking to 3 or 4 of those young people, age 10, I would be pulling a chapter from the book, from your book. It's so rich in kind of content, and of course the high quality of your literary what do you call this, your skills. I said, this book is not just a book that you would say you want to sell it. I think I want to use it to teach, to to take pieces of it and just say, this is what Philippines is like, or any other land that's out there, and our responsibility to it. Am I making sense to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. It warms my heart to hear your words, and that is definitely sort of the dream for me. I would love for it to be taught everywhere.
Yeah.
Because I do hope that it does do a good job of sort of like tackling these issues and becoming a forum or a way for Filipino Americans and everybody else
Yeah.
to open the door to some of these things.
Just one more line.
I see a hand that's raised. Myla, would you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Conrad. I'm a little rusty on Zoom, so
Hi.
excuse me. I know we don't really know each other, but I know Miss Catherine from Heron's Head Park quite a lot. It's been a while, and I'm trying not to tell too many people because I haven't signed anything yet. But I'm supposed to maybe start working with Little Manila Rising next. I just moved back to Stockton, my hometown. And I know Miss Mangas too. We go way back. And so I'm supposed to start working for them next month and hopefully be working with youth. And we started an urban forester program for formerly incarcerated folks. And you see my background, that's my land that I inherited from my dad, who's now passed. And I'm supposed to go back to the Philippines this year and probably go to my mom's side, but I want to go back to my dad's side. And I have a dream of building out a youth program there, and maybe like building a science lab for the youth, but also I haven't read your book yet. I'm going to order it immediately, but just kind of, a combination of what you're talking about, talking story, as well as, using myth to inform and teach. And it's really exciting. And so I'm looking forward to working with the youth out here in Stockton and maybe, using your book.
I would be honored. And
and maybe do a youth exchange, with our youth. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Go, Myla.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go, girl.
Yep.
I serve on the board of Little Manila. I saw your name.
So I haven't signed anything yet, but I'm hoping.
I don't see the chat because I think I'm sharing my screen, but I don't know if I'm ignoring something in the chat.
Oh, no, I was chatting on the side with Miss Catherine and Miss Elena, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. So if I can take just a little bit more of your time, the next segment that I wanted to talk about was, of course, the music, which is such which is such an integral, part of the of a story. Here's me in the redwoods playing music. That's the best place to play, is outside and in nature. And so I'm happiest when my band and I are, playing outside instead of, here in my practice room, which is still nice. yeah, and obviously I cannot talk about the music without mentioning Tanongan Kalanduyan, who was my teacher for a very long time, and he's the one that taught me everything that I know about this music. And so if the you know the places and the memories of you know scenes from my childhood and the mythologies, if there is if Romblon is the center of that and where that comes from, all the music and all of you know everything that I write about the music, and hopefully everything that I try to convey in terms of how strong, beautiful, thunderous it is, it comes from my teacher, Danny Kalanduyan. And he's you know he's the person that basically gifted this art form to Filipino Americans in the United States. 99% of all the songs that anybody in the United States plays that are traditional songs, Kulintang songs, is probably something that Danny taught to them or Danny taught to the person who taught them. Okay? And it's only recently that other artists have started to come in and infuse the Filipino American Kulintang scene with their with songs from their lineage, whether it's a family lineage or a community lineage. But the lineage that that Filipino American Kulintang comes from is definitely the Kalanduyan, Datupiang lineage, which is very, very specific. And I want to share a picture of Danny. Like any artist, Danny was, you know, Danny was knew his value and liked to, you know, like to brag. And here's his favorite picture that he gave me. This is Danny with Hillary Clinton, getting his Master Artist Award from the National Endowment for the Arts. And this is, you know, this is Danny's kind of favorite picture to show everyone. And I'm so lucky to have gotten a copy that I can keep, because I don't think a lot of people have copies of this, and I got an original from him. So he's a real deal. And I was extremely fortunate to be his apprentice under the California Apprenticeship Program, the Alliance of California Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Program. So I apprenticed with Danny through that program. I was his longtime apprentice through that program. And so this book, as written, would not have been possible without my tutelage under him. And in fact, I began this book right out of college. I thought I was going to I wanted to write the great Filipino American fantasy book coming out of college. And I sort of had the plot and some of the things figured out. I'd heard Kulintang in college. And so the very, very first time I heard it, it was like this thunder in my chest, you know, and it satisfied a longing to reconnect with my heritage in a very visceral kind of raw way. that goes beyond, you know, reading history books, and goes beyond going back home and, you know, eating food and seeing the sights. It was just this really, it was just this connection that was way in here. And I do realize that in a lot of ways, it's sort of like, it's not a very accurate connection. Danny is from a whole other culture, really, and a whole other tradition in Mindanao than my family. So I have no bloodline sort of connection to this music, which is why I think it's such a Filipino American thing, because this music has come to symbolize a really deep reconnection with your culture and with your Filipino-ness, and it's become sort of a universal symbol for that and a universal avenue for that. That was, I think, a uniquely Filipino-American experience for me, because I think that I would have related to this music differently if I had stayed in the Philippines and had grown up in Manila. I think it wouldn't have touched me so deeply as it did when I was exposed to it here. Because, you know, I'm sure all of you know that this is something that Filipino American people, Filipino American youth, really hunger for, because it is something that the society, American society, sort of denies them and makes them feel ashamed of, and so, yeah. I don't have to go on and on about that. I think you all know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so that's Danny, and that's Danny's gift to me, and that was Danny's gift to the Filipino American community. He passed away also, unfortunately, like 6 years ago, and so we've been trying to forge ahead and pass on everything that he's taught us, but also sort of figure out what being a Kulintang player means for us. So that's, for me, I only started composing my own original pieces basically after Danny died, because while he was alive, I was satisfied, fulfilled as an artist, as a Kulintang player, just trying to learn the whole universe of songs and culture and tradition that he was able to teach. But in his absence, I've had to sort of try to figure out, you know, what it means for me and what I can or should or want to express with the music. And so, in addition to being an author, I'm a musician, obviously, with some CDs out, music out. That's the cover for one of them, Kagungo, and the band is called Kulintang Dialect. And so maybe I'll share a couple of songs, but first I'll share one excerpt where the Kulintang is sort of featured and how the Kulintang fits into the whole notion of resistance in the book. Okay, so I'm going to read, if you don't mind, from one of the earlier chapters. This is when Alad finally rebels, and he rebels through music. Is the easiest way to kind of explain it. So here we go. I'm going to read it. Oh, it's page 8, by the way. If you're reading along, it's page 8. So, chapter 2 is titled The Cycle Breaks. Alad tried to whisper a happy tune and pretend he wasn't miserable, but the notes had no conviction. His back felt permanently stooped from weeding the entire school grounds, and his hands were dried and peeling from washing and scrubbing every square inch of the schoolhouse. The hard labor had started immediately after his father had stormed into Bruscora's living quarters, knocking over a few desks and yelling into the mage's face. 8! Bagani shouted, tugging Alad roughly to present him to the mage. Bagani pointed at his son's scarred forehead. 8 only, he yelled in his broken perdition. No more or I beat your face. The mage had risen from his seat in alarm and grabbed a chalice stick to ward off the incensed native. The angry man's hands and feet still wore a film of mud from the rice fields, and he was built like a brawny carabao. Get back, the perdition screamed. He jabbed the scepter at Bagani's face as if to unleash some sort of power, but nothing happened. He hugged the chalice stick as Alad's father rounded on him from the front of the desk. Bruscoro backed into a corner, flinching when the muscular farmer swatted his wicker chair aside. But the sight of the fearful old man quickly extinguished the Lucat's rage. Mage Bruscora was just a trembling elder then, eyes shut and cowering, not a perdition overlord. Alad's father stopped short of the mage and let his shoulders sag. He clasped his hands tightly in front of his chest and said as clearly as he could in the broken perdition he had learned from Alad, I ask, no more hurt my son, he my son. For a long moment Bagani looked imploringly into Mage Bruscoro's eyes. Then he turned around and led Alad out of the mage's home. If he remembered Bagani's mercy, Bruscoro gave no hint of it the day after. He was as haughty and unaffected as ever, although he now held onto his chalice stick at all times. He refrained from burning Alad's forehead, but the mage punished every transgression, no matter how slight, whether it was imagined or true, with a series of chores that slowly escalated in difficulty and scope. When the boy finally looked up exasperatedly from the floor he was scrubbing and dared to complain on the 3rd day of this new tribulation, the perdition stooped low to snarl in his face. Go ahead, scabby boy. Tell your father. Give me an excuse to have him arrested, and the invaders when the invaders come this month. I'll have him locked up in Kars for good, and you'll never see him again, ever. Alad kept his mouth shut and stayed after school every day for 3 more days to complete his punishments. At the end of each tedious afternoon, Bembol was helplessly waiting just inside the bamboo gates. The mage forbade his best friend from sharing any part of the chores. Maybe today will be the last day, Alad thought with a sigh. There couldn't possibly be any more to do. He couldn't wait to go home and eat his mother's sour soup before heading off to his grandmother's to play Kulintang. He wiped the last traces of moisture from the final desk he had to make spotless and put away the rags, coconut husk scrubbers, and wooden pail. Then he rubbed his aching back and stiffly made his way to the mage's study. Enter, a reedy nasal voice commanded imperiously when Alad knocked at the door. Is there anything else? Alad asked, peeking in. The mage's face was hidden behind his big black book. Gray eyes appeared briefly atop the worn leather cover and then dismissively went back to reading. You may go. Thank you, Corsair reject, Alad added under his breath. As he turned to close the door, the perdition called after him. Boy? Yes, he turned back. Your music tree. Those horrible gongs and drum? Yes. Alad's heart began thumping. Get rid of them. What? I want them gone, today. Before Alad could protest, the mage set his book down, and shot him a look of warning. He smirked, eyes hard and pitiless. Alad realized that the entire week of toil and humility was just a build-up to this final satisfaction, and Bruscoro intended to have it. Alad shook his head. This is why he hates me? This old man belittled him, treated him like pig shit, because he played his people's music? Alad blinked several times. Without thinking, the Lukat boy whirled around and strode away, slamming the wooden door loudly. He burst out of the school shack and marched angrily towards the Kulintang tree. Bembel heard the commotion and hurried to intercept him halfway to the old Kamagong. Alad, what happened? Bembel asked. Tiddu, Alad announced stiffly. Remember the contest at Hilling's wedding last weekend? Yeah? Play the drum faster this time. Are you sure that's a good idea? Bembel asked. You want to play now? They noticed Mage Bruscoro standing outside the doors, fist planted on his hips. Bembel pointed back with a thumb. The mage, hot and sweaty in his grey robes, looked murderously mad. I'm playing the Kulintang, Alad growled. Play the drum or leave. Okay, Bembel complied half-heartedly. That's what I like to hear, Alad shouted. Maybe his whole 3 years with that pink face had been a build-up to this satisfaction too, and he intended to have it. Before Bembel could take his position manning the drum, Alad leapt onto his seat atop the gnarled root. He struck the first melodic cycle of the Kulintang defiantly. The frenetic Tigtu style fit his aggression. A gifted musician could make the staccato notes of a Tigtu song sound like a barrage of insults, and Alad was very gifted. Once Bembel got up to speed, the string of curses Alad improvised with the melodic patterns grew more and more outrageous. The mage knew their native tongue. Alad observed with satisfaction that the notes were hitting him hotly in the face. I'll stop there. All right, so I'll stop sharing. The rest of that little chapter, something happens between the mage. He tries to do magic, and that's where you first get a hint, a strong hint that maybe there's something about the music that does something, and that what the music does is revealed later on. So that song Tiddu is a fast song that is usually played when people have album contests. The thing about insulting him through Tiddu, I added that. That's not the song that people use to insult other people. Usually when you want to send messages, you use the talking gongs. And the only kind of like inappropriate ditty that Danny ever taught me in the Kulintang was not an insult. It was like a inappropriate thing that you could do with a Kulintang. I'm not going to share that. It's because it's inappropriate. But if you don't mind, I'll play Tiddu and kind of to give you an idea of sort of what I was imagining Alad might have been playing when he was in this scene. Okay, so this is Tiddu. Tidzu, and each song has a drum pattern, so that goes with it, obviously. And so his friend Bembo would have been playing this pattern on the drum. It goes like this. So that's T2. Hopefully that was clear. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I can play some other songs if you want. Talk about the music more if you want, but I wanted to open it up to see if anybody wanted to say anything.
Well, Conrad, this is Marilyn again. I wanted to thank you for this. You know, everything has been really emotional for me. The music and the readings and the real message that you're presenting. And I wanted to share that I'm in the middle of reading a book right now called We Are the Land.
Mm.
And it's a history of Native California people. And I quit reading it in about halfway because it was too painful, you know, and it's painful everywhere in the world that it happens, you know, the Philippines and everywhere. So, you know, it's important to go back to these parts of history and teach the young ones about them. And, you know, I thought that part of what you were saying when the young child is inhabited sort of by the spirit is kind of reminding me of the good angel kind of idea, you know, sitting on your shoulder. And of course, there's the opposite character on the other shoulder. But, you know, speaking to children that way is really an important message to help them deal with, you know, growing up.
Sure.
So, you know, I think you've just done a masterful job all the way through, and I thank you for it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate those words, truly. Yeah, and in terms of, to just respond quickly to the whole, you know, pain of everything, well, you know, hopefully we have the things that can comfort us. Stories, music, tradition, those are always powerful salves for all of these historical hurts. So, for sure. Oh yeah, Braiding Sweetgrass. I'm gonna try to read that. That's next on my list. I'm reading the I Hotel right now.
Conrad, so the healing song plays really prominently in your book. Want to play that one? That would...
Okay. Maybe I'll do one last song, the healing song, and then we can, you know, wrap up. Sounds good? Okay, so thank you, Catherine. So the healing song, okay, so I can't do spoilers, but the healing song really does play prominently in the book.
Yes.
So, yeah. So the healing song is called Tagungo. And usually, actually, when you play this song, there's a dancer, there's a Sagayan dancer, who is actually traditionally supposed to become possessed by a healing spirit. And that's how the healing spirit is able to sort of exorcise the disease that may be afflicting the patient. So that ceremonial way of playing is called ipat, But Tagungo is also played just for processions and festivals, not in that context. So, it sort of depends on what the context is, and that's how people sort of react to the song. So you're not supposed to play it in the ceremonial healing way unless you really mean it. So I'll just play it in the festival way. But this is the song. It's called Tagungo. All right. So that was Tagungo.
Your composition.
That was that was traditional. That was not my composition. Uh, but yeah, I do have my own. I do have my own compositions that I play for people.
All right. Very nice. I can hear chanting in the background too to complete the prayerful moment. Thank you. That's great.
You're welcome.
I hope to attend the one in Sonoma County, Conrad. And Lenny said bring a tropa from Stockton. So maybe Mila and I can drive together to Sonoma County since we're in one space now.
I will have there will be a drummer in that one and some people
Awesome.
dancing. So
Yeah,
you'll see more of the music and the dance.
right.
Along with
Yeah,
everything else.
very
So,
nice.
yeah, hope to see people there for sure.
A full set. Kapwa and you.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope that it was worth, sharing a bit of your Sunday afternoon with me. I certainly had a great time, and hopefully, more people can check it out on your YouTube channel. And
Yeah, we appreciate you doing this. And I thanks everybody for, tuning in today. And it will be on our YouTube channel. And, this is something this is what the FANHS Museum does, is trying to get the history out there, trying to get people involved. And we appreciate our speakers, we appreciate our volunteers and our viewers. So we thank you and hope we can see you again. And and hope everybody who's able to check you out in the future in your future events, will do so. So,
Well, I love Stockton, obviously. Stockton is, very, very important and prominent in our
yeah,
community history. And so anytime you want me to come up there and do something with you all, I
okay.
definitely would love
And
to.
we really thank Elena for, getting us in touch with you. That was a godsend, having discovering you over at Delta and then bringing you by that one day.
Because
That yeah.
Hallelujah is me to the book that was fourth, which is Masalaya's gift. Yes.
So thank you, everybody. And I hope you guys enjoyed today and that you'll check out our other stuff on our museum's YouTube page. And our next speaker is going to be in June. And Al Filion will be talking about his life growing up as Filipino American. And he's going to do it in person at the museum. So we'll be sending out information about that. So
Awesome.
thank you again, everybody.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
Rachel. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.